Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to the Gaming Rules Top 10 Most Anticipated Games for 2021. Now, I've been asked to create this video by Chris, the editor of Tabletop Gaming Magazine, as part of their series of videos for an event that they're running. But I'm going to be putting this up on my YouTube channel afterwards for everybody else to see. So yeah, thank you very much, Chris, for asking me to create this video. Now, like my other top 10 videos that I do on my channel, this is not just my own personal top 10. Because I work full-time in the industry, if I was to just list the 10 games that I'm looking forward to this year, a lot of them are ones that I've worked on professionally. I didn't want this video to come across as just a list of games that I'm working on. So what I did is I asked my Patreon supporters to basically give me their top games that they're looking forward to this year. Got 270 responses, compiled all of the results. And what I'm going to give you now is their top 10 games in order. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about a few of mine just to tag on to the end. So that's the introduction to the video. I've got a lot of things written down. So yeah, now this video is going to cover games that are coming out in 2021, but also games that are going to Kickstarter in 2021. So some of the games that I'm going to be talking about on this list are ones which have already been on Kickstarter and are being delivered this year, or are just being produced this year and didn't go on Kickstarter, but also ones that are going on Kickstarter this year. Basically, I gave them the option. I said, look, what games are you looking forward to this year? And some of the ones that are going to be included on this list are not actually coming out this year, but are going on Kickstarter this year. And after saying that this isn't my top 10, because I don't want to just talk about games that I'm involved in, it turns out a lot of these games that I'm going to talk about I am involved in some way. So just bear that in mind as I start listing them. Right, first of all, number 10 is Euthea, Torment of Resurrection. This was on Kickstarter in May 2020. It's from some new designers and a new publisher in the Czech Republic. This is a big box epic fantasy game. Now, I have played this game. I've done a couple of videos on my channel and I've played it solo. And yeah, this is one of those epic fantasy games where you really feel that you're this big, powerful, heroic character. And the playtime of the game is according, it's to suit that style of game. This is not a quick 30, 45 minute game or anything like that. This is a game which is going to take a number of hours to play, has got multiple scenarios with it. The Kickstarter was really successful. So what that did is it unlocked a lot of extra stretch goals, which means there's a huge amount of content in the game. People have compared it a little bit to Mage Knight in that it's a fantasy-based game with hexes and your heroes and you're exploring, but there's a lot more to it than that. It isn't just another variation on Mage Knight. A lot of the scenarios are competitive, some of the scenarios are cooperative, and that is going to be delivered sometime later this year. I don't exactly know when. Now, I was approached by the publisher last year to basically, as somebody who creates videos for board games, and a number of people, when it came out on Kickstarter, produced videos for the game, and I was one of them. But then they found out that I did rulebook editing, and at which point, for the last 6 months, I think, I've been helping them with the rulebook of this game, and it's pretty much almost there. Yeah, it's been a lot of work over the last 6 months, but as I say, it's a big, heavy game with a lot going on. So if you like your big, epic, sprawling, fantasy-based games, then this is definitely one to check it out. And this was, as I say, this was 10th on the list of ones that my Patreon supporters have voted on. Right, number 9 is Weather Machine. Now, I'll tell you now, I'm working on this game right now. This morning, I've been helping write the rulebook for this game. So Weather Machine is Vital Lacerda's next big box game that is the partnership between Vital Lacerda doing the design, Eagle Gryphon Games doing the production, Ian O'Toole doing the artwork and the graphic design, and me doing the rulebook and the video. Okay, so I'm involved in this game. I've not been involved in it like a lot of other people. Vital's been designing this game for the last 2 years, I think, and he's been playtesting it for a lot for the last few months. I've only recently got involved, literally last week is when I first had my exposure to the game, and I'm going to be working on it. So this is not a game which is coming out this year. This is a game which is going to be going to Kickstarter this year. I can't tell you exactly when, because that's not my decision, but at some point later this year, Eagle Gryphon Games will be launching the Kickstarter for Weather Machine. So if you like Vital Lacerda's styles of games, you're going to like this one, because all of his games, apart from one that came out last year, which was a lot lighter, all of his games are heavy, complex games with a lot of interlocking mechanisms. This one, the theme of the game is really interesting. It's set in a steampunk sort of setting, and there is this professor called Latif, and he's built this weather machine. And this weather machine, he's controlling the weather, but it's actually, because of the butterfly effect, it's causing other extreme weather, which is causing problems. And the players are working with the government, and they're also scientists, and they're building their own prototypes, they're researching, and they're trying to do their own weather machines in order to fix the extreme weather and things like that. There's a lot going on. Normal Euro game stuff, the player with the most points at the end of the game wins, but a really nice theme. And as I say, I'm actively working on this game. As soon as I finish filming this video, I will be going back to working on the rulebook for that. So yeah, that's coming out later this year. And I'm not really going to show you any pictures of this, because at the moment, any pictures that I show you are a complete prototype copy of the game, and they're going to be misleading, because literally it's a prototype copy of the game with completely placeholder graphics and layout that Vittel's done himself, which are going to bear no resemblance whatsoever to the finished version. So yeah, that's why I don't really want to show any images for this at the moment. Ian O'Toole will work his magic. Right, next one is Sleeping Gods. A game I'm not involved in any way, just in case you think it's all about that. So this is, although I'm not involved in this game, so many people have been telling me about this game for months. So Sleeping Gods, designed by Ryan Lockett, who also does his own artwork. Red Raven Games is his company. And this game, I believe, is being delivered to backers. Some UK backers, I think, have got this game already. So yeah, it was on Kickstarter last year. It did really well. It's a campaign-style game, which uses a storybook, and you open the storybook and you use the storybook, so it's one of those. Now, Ryan Lockett has done other games before in the past. I've got a couple of them. From everything I've read about this game, and from everything that people have been telling me about this game, this is a game that I'm really going to enjoy. It's just a case of, like everybody else, it's the too many games, not enough time. But yeah, as more and more people started asking me about it and saying, Paul, are you going to be covering Sleeping Gods on your channel? And I was like, well, I've no plans to, but I looked into it, and yeah, it does look really good. So yeah, apparently it can play solo or multiplayer. You can have players drop in and out depending on who is available at the time, which is great. You save your progress. It's a campaign game rather than a legacy game. I think a lot of people are calling it a legacy game, but as far as I know from what people have told me this morning, there's no permanent changes that you make to the game. So you play a campaign, and whilst you might make notes of what's happened, you're not physically changing any components, like ripping them up or putting stickers on a board or anything like that. If I'm wrong, apologies, but that's what I've been told. So that is Sleeping Gods. Next up is Dead Reckoning. Now, Dead Reckoning is published by AEG, Alderac Entertainment Group, designed by John D. Clare. This is a pirate-themed game that takes John D. Clare's card crafting mechanism that I think we first saw in Mystic Vale one step further, and turns it into this big Euro game where card crafting is a part of it. You're all pirates, and basically your deck of cards represents the sailors on your ship. They can level up and get better and having more improved skills. You're exploring the seas, you are conquering islands, you're trading, you're doing all sorts of stuff. The game looks great. It was on Kickstarter in the summer of last year, summer of 2020. Now, I helped a lot with the rulebook for this game. So when the game, before it was going on Kickstarter, I was working with AEG on the rulebook for this game. And I remember being very involved in the rulebook, including making some very sort of major changes to the structure of the game. But then since then, AEG took the rulebook back and made a few little tweaks. So yeah, I wasn't involved in the rulebook all the way to the end, but I was involved in it a lot. I have played the game. I have a prototype in the game in the other room. And yeah, I played it, I enjoyed it, I've done demos of it, and that is going to be delivered to people this year. I mean, because it was on Kickstarter, this is one of those games where there was lots and lots of stretch goals. So I've only played the base game, but there is and again, I'm not going to use the word legacy because I don't think you actually physically alter any components, but there's definitely things that you can unlock, and tuck boxes and things to open, and special secrets and like expansion sets and all sorts of stuff going on in the game. Does look really good. Right, next up is Burn Cycle. Again, this is not my list. I didn't vote on this list, but a lot of these I'm involved in. So Burn Cycle is the latest game from Chip Theory Games. Now, for those people who don't know, Chip Theory Games is one of my favourite publishers. They've done Too Many Bones, they've done Cloudspire, they've done Hopla Marcus as well, which I've not played, but Too Many Bones and Cloudspire are amazing. Chip Theory Games are known for their production quality and also their very interesting off-the-wall designs. Their games, there's kind of nothing like them. I mean, Too Many Bones is a fantasy cooperative adventure game, and there's dozens and dozens of those out there, but there's nothing quite like Too Many Bones. And Cloudspire, sure, there are tower defense games out there and there are skirmish games out there, but there's nothing quite like Cloudspire. The creative people behind Chip Theory Games do really, really good stuff. And Burn Cycle is their latest one. Now, it was on Kickstarter at the end of last year. It is due to be delivered this year, not anytime soon, because they are still working on it and still developing it. But the setting of Burn Cycle is, again, something that is a very, very interesting idea. So it's the year 3000. The players, it's a cooperative game. The players are all robots, and humanity has wiped itself out due to our foolish nature and, you know, messing around with things. But the robots have brought us back to life, and now we're messing everything up again. But basically, it's an infiltration style game where the players are members of the 404, which is like a group of robots that are trying to break into these offices, basically steal something from the humans. And a game takes place, so it's a cooperative game, each player plays a robot, you've got all of these unique skills, but it's in a futuristic setting, and it uses a very interesting action system, which is the Burn Cycle, for the actions that a robot can take. But, again, setting it apart from Chip Theory Games' other games, this is not a combat-heavy game like the other ones. A lot of the game is moving around and trying to avoid the guards and things like that. So, yeah, I'm going to be working on the rulebook for this as of tomorrow. So a recent change, this was only announced like, you know, last week, but Chip Theory Games have approached me in a professional capacity to help with the rulebook for the game. So that wasn't known about until recently. But yes, that's Burn Cycle. I'm thinking that's going to be delivered this year. I think it will be. Yeah, I think it will be. Right, next on the list is Perseverance Castaway Chronicles Episodes 1 and 2. Because Perseverance Castaway Chronicles is going to be a 4-episode game. This is Mind Clash Games' latest big creation. And Mind Clash Games, if you know their games, they've done Trickerion, they've done Anachrony, they've done Cerebria. They do really big box, really high production quality, lots going on, right? Big epic games, and this one is no different. Now, the design team for this game is interesting because it's actually, if you look on BGG, there's actually 6 people listed as designers of this game. I've spoken to them, and it is very much a shared thing. You've got the people at Mind Clash Games themselves. David Turtz has been involved because he works closely with them. And yeah, the end result is what looks like a fantastic game, and that's going to be delivered this year. So basically the theme of this game is, it starts out that you are, well, there's like one of these luxury ocean liners, passenger voyage things, and it gets caught up in like a storm, and it finds itself sort of crashed on this island, and it turns out there's dinosaurs on this island. Now, the reason why it's going to be 4 episodes is each episode actually is a part of a story. But if you're worried about this being a narrative-driven campaign game, it's not, okay? There is a story behind episode 1, but episode 1 is a Euro game, and you play the game, and it is all of your Euro game stuff. And then episode 2 is another self-contained Euro game. So it's basically 4 separate games, all connected together with a similar theme, but the story actually evolves. So in episode 1, you've just landed on the island, you've found out there's dinosaurs, occasionally you get attacked, and you have to run around and build your defences and, you know, that sort of stuff. In episode 2, it takes place X number of months later. There's a small town that's been built up, and you've got these camps established, and then you start going in exploring more. Episodes 3 and 4, I'm not allowed to tell you about. I did manage to convince them late one night to tell me what episodes 3 and 4 were about, but I can't say anything. So yeah, so that's coming out later this year. Production quality looks fantastic. I love the theme of the game. I really, really enjoy it. And having played it, the mechanisms of the game, there's dice drafting, and yeah, it looks really interesting. Next up is Darwin's Journey. And if we're talking about games that I'm not involved in any way, this is one of them. But when I looked at this game, after so many people told me about it, I was like, this is exactly my kind of game. It is a medium to heavy Euro game. It's worker placement, designed by Simone Luciani and Nestor Mangone, which are designers whose games I've got. I've got their games. I've got some of the games they've designed before, and I really enjoy them. So I know this game is going to be a good game, even though I've not really looked into it myself that much. But it was on Kickstarter at the start of this year, so only a couple of months ago. It did really well. It raised €1 million. It's unlocked 46 stretch goals. I've had a quick look at it, and it does look fantastic. Thundergriff's Games are the publisher. Maybe it's one I should have looked at the time more closely, but it's definitely one which is on my radar as a game that I'm really looking forward to playing this, because looking at the game, it just seems to have so many of those things that I enjoy in a game, and I can see why it was really popular and everybody was talking about it just a couple of months ago. Right, next up on the list is Endless Winter. So this is another big successful Kickstarter from November 2020. Fantasia Games, so new publisher, Fantasia Games, but with some people who've been involved in the industry for a while. The designer is Stan Kordaninski, but the developer is Johnny Pack Cantin. I've been involved in this game a little bit. I've been working on the rulebook for the game, and I'm going to be working on the rulebook more, because when I worked on the rulebook for the game, it was pre-Kickstarter. Now that after the Kickstarter has finished, they've gone back, they've been doing even more development and tweaks to the game. So I'm due at the end of this month, I believe, to go back to the rulebook to find out what's been changed and to update it. So yeah, Endless Winter, Paleo Americans, I think is the full title. There's a few different mechanisms going on here. There's a little bit of set collection, there's worker placement, there's a bit of deck building. There's a few different things going on, but everybody I know who's played this game has really enjoyed it. And it was an honour for me to be asked to be involved in the game from a rulebook writing aspect. So yeah, looking forward to that one. Not quite sure when that is going to be delivered, but in December of this year, I'm going to be creating the video for the game. So I hope it's going to be out by the end of this year. That's when I'm supposed to start work on creating the how to play video for this game. Next up, number 2 on the list is ISS Vanguard. This is the latest game from Awaken Realms. It is a sci-fi game, and it's the first game that went on to GameFound. So I've mentioned Kickstarter a lot in this video, but GameFound is an alternative to Kickstarter, and it's been created by the team at Awaken Realms, and ISS Vanguard is the first game which was on GameFound as a platform. So GameFound has been used before as a pledge manager, I believe, but ISS Vanguard was the first game that was actually on there as a launch replacement for Kickstarter type thing. And since then, loads of other games have got onto GameFound, but it did really well. It raised about $5 million. It ran at the end of 2020. In fact, I think it ran in December and just running over into 2021. Now, I can't tell you that much about this game, other than it's sci-fi. The production quality is going to be fantastic. The miniatures look amazing. But the reason why I can't tell you that much about it is because during the Kickstarter campaign, Awaken Realms contacted me and asked me to be professionally involved and working on the rulebook. Now, one thing I like to do when I'm going to be involved in working on the rulebook for the game is I try not to find out anything in advance, especially because this is a game that after the Kickstarter, and there were loads of playthrough videos out there during the Kickstarter, is being developed and being changed. So if I'd have watched any of the videos that were out there, I can pretty much guarantee you that those videos are now wrong. And this is no disrespect to the people who've made those videos, because they made those videos with the information they had at the time, and I do exactly the same. But after the game has been on Kickstarter, it goes back into development, they start listening to things, feedback from the fans, but also they carry on working on the game. And the end result of the game is going to be different from what's already been out there. So that's why I have avoided most of the information about this game in terms of detail. All I know is it's sci-fi, the production quality is going to be good, and the artwork looks amazing. Now, I was a backer of Tainted Grail, and in the Tainted Grail pledge that I got, there was an art book for this game, which I'm going to put a picture of it on screen now. And just looking at this art kind of got me, ooh. Now, I know that the art of the game just his artwork and bears no relation whatsoever to the game itself, but it kind of got me excited about the game. So yeah, I was going to be getting a copy of ISS Vanguard anyway. It was on my list to get, but then when they asked me to get professionally involved, I was like, ooh, cool, I get to be involved. So yeah, so that's ISS Vanguard, number 2 on the list. And finally, the number 1 game on the list of what games my Patreon supporters are looking forward to getting in 2021. There's no surprise about this one, and in fact it was way ahead by almost double the votes of everything else, and that's Frosthaven. Frosthaven is the sequel to Gloomhaven, although you could say that Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion was the sequel to Gloomhaven. But Frosthaven is building on the huge success of Gloomhaven. You can't really have much more success with a game than Gloomhaven has got. And it's building on that. Now, I am professionally involved in this game. I will be creating a video for the game. I'm friends with the designer. And yeah, putting that aside, Gloomhaven is one of my favourite games. I absolutely love Gloomhaven. Me and my partner are still playing Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion now. And Frosthaven, for me, looks better than Gloomhaven. And I'm saying that because, although Gloomhaven is fantastic, Gloomhaven still has a couple of things in it which just not quite perfect. Now, bearing in mind, I find holes where there are not holes, but there's a couple of things about Gloomhaven which make it, for me, a 9.5 out of 10 game and not a 10 out of 10 game. Frosthaven, from speaking to Isaac, those things have been fixed, right? Those little small issues that I had with it have been fixed, and he's changed one of the things about Frosthaven that I'm really looking forward to is you're actually crafting in the game. So you go out and you find supplies. During the campaign, you find like bits of wood and bits of metal, and you can use them to craft and build buildings and things like that. I love crafting in games. And although you're not crafting items, you're kind of crafting buildings, but you get to build up the town of Frosthaven by putting buildings on the board as your party of adventurers goes out and gathers resources. That sounds fantastic. But Frosthaven is going to be even bigger and even more epic, I was going to say epicer, than Gloomhaven. It's got more scenarios on it, it's got more content in it. I'm actually a guest designer on one of the scenarios. I worked with Richard Ham, and we sort of worked on a scenario idea together. And yeah, it's going to be great. And on one hand, I can't wait for it to come out because it's going to be great, and we love Gloomhaven, and it's just more of the same but better. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, oh boy, when it does come out, I'm going to have to put months of my life aside to get this played. But yeah, Frosthaven, number 1 on my Patreon supporters list of most anticipated games for 2021. Right, so just before we wrap up, I just wanted to add a few extra ones of my own. And these are all ones that I'm involved in, but these are ones that I am personally excited about for one reason or another. And the first one is a game which you might think is not a kind of game that should be on my list, and that is Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 3. Now, Batman Gotham City Chronicles has had 2 releases before, and Season 3, it's going back to Kickstarter, and it's going to have some new expansion content, but it's going to have a completely new rulebook, because one of the criticisms of the game has been that the rulebook for the game was not great. And I'm saying not great, and I'm being kind. The rulebook for the game has been a stumbling block and an obstacle for people learning how to play the game and actually getting the game to the table. I was approached by the people at Monolith to say, Paul, would you like to work on our rulebook? We have a reputation for our rulebooks not being good. We'd like you to work on this rulebook, okay? And I can tell you now that me and a couple of my team have been working on this rulebook, and we have collectively put over 280 hours of work into this rulebook, which blows my mind, because I think, hang on a minute, how has it taken so long? This is an existing rulebook, and all you're doing is making it better. Well, no. What we've done is we've actually thrown the rulebook in the bin and started again from scratch. It's been a huge amount of work. We've been working on it for the last 6 months. And the reason why I'm excited about this game is that because I've worked on this game so much, I've actually got to quite like this game. And I whilst it's not my kind of game, it is a sort of a 2-sides skirmish scenario-based tactical combat game set in the Batman DC universe. Now, that is not the kind of game that I play, and this is not a game that I would have gone out and sought to play myself, but having worked on the game a lot and spoken to a lot of the fans of the game, I've actually got a lot of appreciation for this kind of game. And although it might not be one that I would generally play myself, I can see what the game's trying to do and, you know, the good parts of it. And it's my job to turn that rulebook into one that people can get and actually then learn how to play. So I'm excited about it going on Kickstarter later this year because I've kind of got dragged into it, and I'm now part of the team that's helping this be a thing. And I'm actually really excited and a little bit nervous about it going back onto Kickstarter, or they might use GameFound, I don't know, later this year to see what happens to it. So that's Batman Gotham City Chronicles. The next one, which I'm actually really surprised wasn't on the top 10 list voted on by my Patreon supporters. It was in there. It did get about 4 or 5 votes, but it didn't get enough to make it into the top 10, and that's Frostpunk. Now, Frostpunk is a board game that was on Kickstarter last year, is coming out this year, I think, and it's Glass Cannon Unplugged, which is a new publisher, but the people behind it, again, have had a lot of industry experience, and the design team behind it is a very strong pedigree of designers behind the game. But Frostpunk is one of my favourite settings. Frostpunk is a computer game, and this is the board game version of the computer game. And Frostpunk, for me, is one of the best computer games I have ever played. It is a city-building survival game set in an alternative history, Victorian England, where extreme weather and you're struggling to survive. And I just absolutely love the computer game. So when I heard they were doing a board game version of it, I was like, wow, this is going to be fantastic. And it was. The Kickstarter did really well. How much did it make? Did I write it down? 2.5 million. October 2020. And yeah, they contacted me, and I'm professionally involved because I'm helping them do the rulebook for the game. I might do some videos as well later on. I mean, I've done some videos now already, but like I was saying earlier on, the videos that I've done on my channel were using Tabletop Simulator because I didn't have a physical prototype. And it was an earlier version of the game. That video is now wrong because they've changed a number of the rules. But yeah, Frostpunk, a game I'm super looking forward to, especially with all of the stretch goals that got unlocked, and I'm professionally involved in it, and hopefully it's going to be coming out later this year. And finally, 2 games on my list which I'm personally really excited about are the first 2 games in the Stefan Feld City Collection. Stefan Feld is one of my favourite designers. He's done loads and loads of brilliant games. I've probably got about, I don't know, 12, 15 of his games, and I love his games. And he's made an agreement with Queen Games that over the next few years they are going to be publishing a series of games in what's called the City Collection. The first 2 games in that collection are Hamburg and Amsterdam, which are actually second editions effectively, or redone versions of 2 of his previous games, Bruges and Macau. Now, Bruges and Macau, I've played them loads, and I like both of them, okay? Bruges, I felt could have been a better game, and a lot of other people felt it could have been a better game, and that's what Hamburg is. Hamburg has taken Bruges, and for me, not at my request, but just coincidentally, has fixed a couple of the problems that I had with Bruges. Specifically, the card draw was a little bit too random. Now, you choose which stack of cards you're going to be taking from. But anyway, that's Hamburg. That's going to be coming out later this year. And Amsterdam is a new version of Macau. Now, I'm curious as to what they do with it, because for me, Macau didn't need changing. Unlike Bruges, which I felt was a great game but needed some tweaks, Macau I think is a great game, and I can't see how they're going to make it better. So we'll see. Now, I am due to create the official tutorial videos for these games. In fact, personally, I'm very excited because Queen Games have asked me to be the one to create the tutorial videos for all of the games in this series for the next few years. And as I said earlier, I'm a huge Stefan Feld fan. So for me, this is an honour to be asked to do this. And I'm due to create the videos for these first 2 games sometime in the next few months. So I can't say exactly, because the videos that I make will probably be with an advanced prototype rather than the finished copies. I don't yet know. I'm still in discussion with them, but both of those games should be out later this year. And that's everything. So that's 10 games that my Patreon supporters voted on. And to be honest, if I did my own top 10, I would probably agree with a lot of those ones that they mentioned. Most of those games I have some kind of professional involvement in. That's just how it is. The two games that I didn't have a professional involvement in, Darwin's Journey and Sleeping Gods, both look fantastic. So I can see why people are excited about them. But that is everything. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any comments on it, please let me know. If there's any games which are in your top 10, which weren't listed here, please leave them as a comment below. And if there's any games that we talked about which you don't think should be in the top 10, no, just keep it positive. Just tell us about games that you're excited about, which I didn't talk about today. But that's everything. So again, thank you very much to Chris from Tabletop Gaming Magazine for asking me to create this video, and to all of my Patreon supporters for making the content that I create possible. If you like the content that I create and you want to support me and help the channel and help make more videos like this possible, then check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/gamingrules. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.